Welcome to the Highland Waves podcast, originating from Marshbrook Studios, located on a bank of the world-renowned Margaree River in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, Canada. Highland Waves feature stories about the people, the places, and those who come to visit us here in Inverness County. I'm Pat Wall, your host. This morning's special podcast is devoted to an important topic: the proposed electoral boundary changes coming to Inverness County, which will affect a large segment of the northernmost part of the county and, if approved, will likely take place following the next election. The Commission tasked with setting the boundaries has held a first round of public consultation with affected residents. A second and final round will begin in various locations starting on October the 5th. Information sessions to prepare Margaree area residents for these final consultations will take place Sunday, September the 28th, beginning at 2 p.m. at St. Michael's Hall, East Margaree, and Monday, September 29th, beginning at 7 p.m. at the Margaree Forks Firehall. With me in studio is Mr. Marcel Deveaux, who is the lead presenter at the information sessions. Welcome to Highland Waves, Marcel.
Thank you.
Marcel, you were born in Cape Breton?
I was, I was born in Dingwall. My father worked at the gypsum plant there. And then when that closed, we moved to Halifax, and in the Halifax area, and my father was working there at the National Gypsum Company. But we returned to Cape Breton in 1973, I think, when my father worked for Evans Coal Mine as an electrician. I completed high school at Margaree Forks in 1969-70, I believe.
Okay. You became a member of the Canadian Armed Forces after that, I believe?
Yes, I did. A couple of years after high school, I joined the Armed Forces. I joined as a private, and I worked as an electronics technician. Along the way, I completed a degree in electrical engineering, and I received a commission as an officer. And I served for 22 years, and I retired as a captain.
Okay. What was your field of expertise, electrical engineering?
Electrical engineering, yes.
Okay. Since you retired, you came back to the area, and you're now involved with the Canadian Legion. And you do a wonderful job, by the way, of leading the memorial services in the area on Remembrance Days.
Thank you.
Why did you get involved in this discussion on the Inverness County boundary changes?
Well, someone mentioned that there was an article in the Oran that I might be interested in. So it was... The article was from a couple of weeks prior. I looked it up, and it was from a group of people in Cheticamp who were talking about changes to the electoral boundaries here in Cheticamp. So I didn't know anything about it, but I heard that there was a meeting the next day in Inverness, so I went to it to find out more. And I learned that the process was quite far along, and this was actually an official Electoral Boundaries Commission board that was set up to get input from people on whether or not Cheticamp area should have its own electoral district, provincial district, separate from or cut out of the Inverness County district that existed at the time. So I was surprised how far along it went, and then I heard there was another meeting in Cheticamp. I went to that, and I heard that there was, I heard from a lot of people from Cheticamp who were largely the people promoting this, and I got the impression that it was almost a done deal. So I was kind of concerned because people in the outlying areas didn't know anything about it, so I went on to get some more information about it after that.
Okay. There's a strong and well-organized core group of people who have lobbied for this, and they have convinced the Supreme Court of Nova Scotia that their concerns are legitimate, and it has directed the Nova Scotia government to set up a commission to achieve that representation. That means potentially changing the electoral boundaries to get there. The Commission has provided and presented their first set of recommendations at a round of public meetings. They've included the feedback they've received, and they have revised their recommendations and will now present them at another round of public meetings beginning October the 5th. The information sessions I referred to in my opening are to inform the citizens of the Margaree area as to how they will be affected by these latest recommendations, and to help them better prepare themselves to voice their concerns and recommendations to the Commission at the October meetings. Marcel, can you now outline those recommendations?
Sure. They have three recommendations. The first one is the status quo, to leave the provincial Inverness boundary as it is. The second recommendation is to form a new district that includes Pleasant Bay, Cheticamp, Granitang, and Margaree, up to the Margaree River, go to the Margaree Harbour Bridge, and then we'll go past and include East Margaree, Arsenault Hill, Fordview, and end at Doyle's Bridge. That's the second. The third one would be to include that, but go all the way to include all of the Margarees, including Southwest Margaree, along the Shore Road to past Chimney Corner, south all the way to Dunvegan, and to go south to, I believe, to include Lake Alaw, and it would be to Lake Alaw, I'm quite sure. If not, it would be just before Lake Alaw. Those are the boundaries that they're suggesting.
Okay. Can you briefly highlight the major drawbacks and positive aspects of each recommendation as you see them now?
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'll start with the one that ends at Doyle's Bridge. There are positive things to this. I think for the Acadian community, particularly in Cheticamp, there is a core group that places a very high priority on their Acadian culture. And for these people, this would be it would enable them to probably have their own MLA who spoke to them in their own language, who would focus in on their priorities. But I don't think that would have a big impact on the core priorities that people have of education, healthcare, etc. But it would be a big morale boost for these people. Not everyone, but for these people. And that's certainly a positive. The biggest drawback, in my mind, is that it would divide the Margarees. I think when the Commission initially started this, they saw that the Margaree River had a French community on one side and largely English on the other, and they said, well, that is a great place to make the boundary. However, they didn't realize that Margaree itself is a community. We see ourselves as Margareers, and this would be splitting us down the middle. So that is one problem. There are other problems. For example, the Meals on Wheels program we have here operates, this and other programs operate on both sides of the river, and it would mean that the people running it would have to go to two MLAs for their funding, which now the committee pushing for the change will say, well, that's great. You have two MLAs instead of one that can help you, but it's absolutely not the case. It is two. The problem with this, and the majority of the work, is the work to get the funding and the bureaucracy. So it is twice the bureaucracy, and both MLAs would be wanting to know or trying to get the other MLA to provide the funds. So the people running these programs, this program and other programs, see that as a problem. There isn't, so we'll leave it there for now. The next boundary includes Southwest Margaree all the way down to Dunvegan. And the good part about that is that it would keep the Margarees together. The bad part is, or the difficulty, is that Southwest Margaree associates itself not only with Margaree, but with the Gaelic culture of Inverness, Port Hood, and Mabo, and down the road. And it would be separating them from those communities, but worse, the Acadian percentage of that district, if it went all the way to include Southwest Margaree, would be about 32%. So it is not clear if there would be an Acadian elected or if there would be an Anglophone or Scottish, the Gaelic side would be elected. And that would set up a potential conflict between both sides. If the Acadian, if it was a LeBlanc that was the MLA, then the McDonald's on the other side would say, well, they're just taking care of Cheticamp, they're not taking care of us. It's not true, not necessarily true that would happen, but that's the danger. On the other hand, if it was a McDonald that was elected, then the LeBlancs on the other side would be saying, well, these guys are getting all the all the benefits, and we are losing out. So it would set up a potential conflict between the two sides, and that would be a very, very bad result.
The interim report mentions voter parity and effective representation. Can you please comment on those?
Sure. It comes to those two things are the basis that the decision, whatever decision is, it'll be made on those two things. Voter parity reflects, I'll give you an example. Let's say that in the electoral district of Inverness, there are, or in Nova Scotia, there are two groups of 20,000 people. Take a group of 20,000 people and put them in their own district. So it's a district of 20,000 people. They would elect one MLA to send to Halifax, and that MLA would have one vote in the legislature. Now imagine that you had another 20,000 people, but they were divided among 10 different electoral districts, voting districts. The 20,000 people would then send 10 electors to Halifax, to the legislature, and they would have 10 votes. So depending on the size of the district, you can have unfairness. So the 20 that are distributed among 10 districts would have 10 times the number of votes that the 20,000 people in one district have. So voter parity refers to the fact that all districts should have the same number of voters, to be fair. Now, effective representation, I'll use another example. The example would be Preston on the outskirts of Halifax. There are several African Nova Scotian communities there, several black communities, and for a long time they were distributed in such a way that the electoral districts they were in, they were minorities in those districts. So however they voted, it would always be a white candidate that was representing them. So this was seen as unfair, and the government said that in order to provide effective representation, it would be possible to create districts that were smaller than the average size. And I missed that point. The voter parity means also that the voting districts have the same number of voters in each. So for the effective representation, the point was made that there are cultural or racial groups that could be swamped by the vote of a larger population of a different group in their area. So in order to effect effective representation for the black communities around Halifax, they were all mostly put into their same voting district, so they would have a chance to vote to elect a person of color who would be familiar with their racial background, their history, and their culture to represent them. And what came out of that is that it is possible to have special protected electoral districts that are smaller than the average size, which is the ideal, in order to provide certain cultural groups with effective representation in the legislature.
Getting back to dealing with bureaucracies, how will these new recommendations affect the individuals in those, whichever one is picked, their communications with County Council?
I've spoken to Blair Phillips on this, and he told me that his concern would be that he would now be interfacing or speaking with or dealing with two MLAs instead of one. And in some of those areas, say the county was divided in the one case where the district was from Pleasant Bay to Doyle's Bridge, then his area of coverage is all of the Margarees and Granitang. So in that case, he would be dealing with two MLAs, and which is for him, he has in this It's twice the bureaucracy for him. There would be competition between the two sides, and the two MLAs would be looking to see why the other MLA isn't providing the benefit for the area and so on. So he sees it as a problem that there would be, that he would be dealing with two MLAs instead of one.
Okay, what about the social aspect of these changes? To your knowledge, have they been considered?
Well, there's two parts to that, I guess. The one is that people in one part of even right now, for recently, let me say this, recently there was an article in the Oran on the scuttlebutt questioning why Cheticamp was people in Cheticamp were going for this new district when they seem to be doing very well in terms of getting government funding and so on. So there is the possibility, right now, I think Margaree and Cheticamp, Pleasant Bay, I think most areas are comfortable with the level of government support they're getting. I think we generally do quite well. If we had a new district, there would be the suspicion that, for example, the Cheticamp district might be getting more than the Inverness district. So there is a question of funding there. There could be some tensions that built up around that.
Okay. So this could lead to dissension among the groups.
Yes. In particular, say, dividing the Margarees, a long time ago, there was tension on both sides between the French and the English. I myself, even when I was going to high school, I sensed it a little bit, but as a teenager, it was not something that really jumped out at me. But when I speak to people in the area, they say that definitely it was a factor there. Right now, I think we have a fantastic community among the Margarees. We get along great. And remember, we've grown up together, gone to school together, we socialize together. Our parishes transcend both sides of the river. It's a really nice situation now. If we were divided down the middle, for one thing, it would cause potential problems. I won't say necessarily that it would be a problem, but it is an area that could possibly become a problem.
Okay. I will now list the items Marcel will expand on regarding the current situation and his suggestions for discussion at the information sessions that will hopefully be presented at the October public meetings. And those are what the issues are, an overview of the technical and legal issues involved, a description of what the Commission is doing, what stage we are at now, a discussion of the pros and cons, audience feedback, opinions on various subjects, and how best to present the options to the Electoral Boundary Commission, whether it will be a joint submission, by whom, or individual submissions, whether they be written or whether they're oral. Can you briefly talk about each of these, Marcel?
Sure. Excuse me. First, what the issue is there is a group in Cheticamp who have, well, let me go back. There was very briefly, there was a commission, a boundary commission in 2019 that recommended special electoral districts for 3 Acadian communities in the province. They were about half the size of the average electoral district in the province. But at that time, Cheticamp was looked at by this commission, and they said, well, Cheticamp district is just too small because these other districts are half this average size. The Cheticamp district would be about 1/5 the average size. It was too small, so they didn't officially consider it. Then in 2023, the Fédération Acadienne de Nouvelle-Écosse, FAIN as I'll call them, it's a provincial group promoting Acadian affairs, sued the government along with some individual members from Cheticamp to say that the government was wrong in not looking at Cheticamp as having its own district. They won the case, and then in 2025, this new electoral commission was established to look at the question again. So the issue is, should Cheticamp and area have its own district to promote the effective representation of Acadian issues in this area? And the commission is doing that now. That's where we are. There's a side issue here with this, is how the process has taken place, because the commission did do the advertising on this. They advertised in all the radio and paper media in the area, but it just didn't work. Everyone, no one except the people that were actually pushing this proposal knew about the proposal. So the people in favor of it had the opportunity to make really strong arguments, well prepared, but other people didn't. So the real issue is, should Shettycampen area have its own electoral district, even though it would be very small compared to others, and has the process been fair up to now? Now, the technical and legal issues are, one is, electoral districts in Nova Scotia, we have 55 of them, and the simple version of it is that they should all have the same number of voters. This way, everybody's vote will have the same weight, and all is good. However, there are other factors, such as cultural groups. For the Native African Nova Scotians in Preston, for example, or the Acadians, a lot of them, after the expulsion of the Acadians, when they were dispersed, they were put in small separate groups, and they ended up in areas where their voice didn't predominate. They were put in larger English areas. So I'm losing my train of thought here. So the issue is, in Shettycamp, does the Acadian population here warrant its own district, a voting district? The problems would be that it would be very small compared to others, and it is not 100% Acadian. It's about 50-50 Acadian and English. So the commission has to look at those two things and make a recommendation to the government. Its first step was to get together, learn about boundaries and how the government works in that way. By the way, the commission is made up of not politicians, but it's lawyers, academics, and so on. So they got themselves up to speed on how to go about doing this. They put up a straw man of 4 different districts that they thought might work, and they were all divisions of Inverness County. And in July, they came and they presented these at public hearings, these options, and they asked for feedback on it. Now, the pros and cons, that's the meat of all of this, and I'd like to leave that and the feedback for a minute. What we're going to have some public meetings, as Pat said, on this coming Sunday, the 28th, in Margaree at 2 o'clock at the St. Michael's Hall, and one at the Margaree Forks Fire Department on Monday the 7th, Monday at 7 o'clock. And we're going to talk about these.
Excuse me, Marcel,
yes.
the date for the one at Margaree Forks Firehall is September 29th.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
29th.
And I think in the essence of time, we're going to move on here to what do you want people to think about after they leave these meetings? You want how best to present their feelings to the Electoral Boundary Commission. Is that correct?
That is right.
Okay.
That is right.
And you want them to think about whether a joint submission will be made or individual submissions. Mm-hmm. If it's joint, then who will present those? And if it's individual, obviously there will be individual, but they should consider whether they want to do a written one or they want to do an oral. Mm-hmm. Correct?
Yes, that's right. Okay. The commission will take oral submissions at these meetings, and they will take written submissions by email or letter mail after the fact. Okay. And there will be a couple of, some individuals are well placed to present particular problems with the division, should it be at the Doyle's Bridge or Southwest Margaree. And in those cases, we will ask them to either, whatever suits them, to make an oral submission or a written submission. We would also ask for people from different areas. For example, Pleasant Bay. If some people from Pleasant Bay were available to make either an oral or a written submission, that would be very helpful. There are some specific problems that come about, such as the Meals on Wheels program that operates on both sides of the river, for example. And then there are other ones. There is, for example, I'm hearing a lot that there is a concern that if we have a new district, it will be dominated by people from Cheticamp. And it's the people who are pushing for this new district, and they are the people who place a very high priority on the French culture and language. That is a good thing, but most people have that. I am Acadian, and I think that the language and culture is very important, but also the common priorities such as healthcare, infrastructure, jobs, and education. So that's another type of issue that we want to present to the Commission to say that the Cheticamp priorities, especially the core group that are pushing their priorities are not necessarily the same as the priorities of people in other areas.
Okay, you were going to be at these presentations, of course, to explain what we have talked about today and other questions and what have you that people will need to be answered.
That's correct.
Okay, so you've got a lot on your plate, and I thank you for your work in preparing the Margaree residents and for those important upcoming information sessions. Once again, they are on Sunday, September 28th at 2 p.m. at St. Michael's Hall, East Margaree, and Monday, September 29th at 7 p.m. at the Margaree Forks Firehall. It is very important for people to attend, discover how they'll be affected, and provide their input. Thank you to our listeners, and the usual reminder to hit the like and subscribe button so you can stay up to date. Remember, too, that subscribing to Highland Waves is free. Our thought for today is by G.K. Chesterton. Democracy is like blowing your nose. You may not do that well, but it's something you ought to do yourself. So long for now, Pat.